and request that you do temperature screenings daily. If you see a list of a child with symptomology, reminiscent of flu, that could be anything from a recently developed persistent cough, gastrointestinal issues, certainly fever, we would tell you to keep the child home. If we see symptomology at school, we will have what we call a quarantine area and a health officer, essentially, and we will do a double check of the symptomology and do some screening temperature checks, and then it's our goal is to keep kids who appear to be ill away from kids who are healthy, and that's really no different than what we do on a daily basis in school anyway, but obviously it's going to be ramped up quite a bit. If a case turns out to be positive, and this is a big issue with with what we've been working with the health department on, if a case turns out to be positive, we don't have to immediately go into shutdown mode. And the health department typically is advising people to quarantine if they've been around a positive case. With schools, they're not so clear cut. They're simply saying to us, let us know immediately and we will begin contact tracing. So their response to that problem has prompted us to develop in-person instructional plans that keep kids apart as much as possible. Even at the younger grades, you're looking at kindergarten, first grade, we're redesigning the classrooms to keep them apart as much as possible. We can't ensure that kids are always going to be 6 feet apart, but they will be, at a minimum 2 to 3 feet apart. And in those particular cases, we're not going to require those younger kids to wear masks once they get into the classroom. Now, if there's symptomology within the classroom, we could certainly change that. But the health department would come in and they'd say to us, like, where was this child sitting? It turned out to be a positive case. We would identify it, and if we could just isolate it to a couple of kids, our quarantine protocols might be very minimal. So our goal is to bring kids in to create a low-risk environment. We only want to bring kids into, and our staff into, what we would consider low-risk environments. And we believe we can do that if we maintain distancing. And if we can't maintain distancing, then we maintain masking. And if we do those things, we get placed into what's called low-risk category. And at that point, we feel it's safe to bring kids in. Let me see if I have any questions after that long preamble that I said I wouldn't do. I see other districts are adopting the K-12 kids wearing masks all day. Is that something you guys may do? Again, no, not at the kindergarten through 4th grade level, no. We'll have masks in transportation mode. We'll have masks in common areas. But once we get them settled into a classroom where we can ensure that they're spread out, they're in kind of pods, then we can take the masks off. We will give teachers and administrators flexibility. Again, if it looks like there's some symptomology, we'll immediately put the masks back on. If it looks like we're going to have to work in close proximity within 2 feet of another student, then we will require masks for a short period of time. So it'll be kind of an on and off environment. Once you get past 4th grade, you're in 5th grade, 6th grade, on up into high school, masks are required all the time while you're in the building. And to accommodate that, the impact, the negative impact that might have, we will be building in periodic breaks into each classroom session, so kids get some time away from their masks where they can take a few deep breaths and then put them back on. Parents tend to send their kids to school all the time with cold or sick. How is that going to be different? Um, well, Jen, everything's different right now. If you put everything that we used to do in the context of what we're doing right now, things don't tend to apply. So, you know, how are we going to ensure people wear masks? We're going to go on a massive educational and health campaign. We're going to be very strict and serious about how we adjust it, because it's not just a piece of clothing that we're looking forward to you putting on. You know, it's not wear your red shirt day. It is something where you can help minimize the impact of a disease and sickness on someone else. And in that context, people will comply. Do kids send their kids to school? Yes. I've been guilty of it too. But in the context with which we're living right now, there's no way. You have to be more diligent about it. And if we don't see cooperation from families in that regard, if it's persistent over time, in the context we're currently working, we will ask those families to keep their children at home. I'm waiting for some follow-ups. Again, positive cases. I don't have real clear answers for all of it, because the health department doesn't give us real clear answers, and they can't really. What they want is they want us to assure that we've created a plan that puts kids in a low-risk environment, and we have. After we've done that, the health department says, okay, you're in a low-risk environment. The chance of bringing a positive case into your school, it's there, but the chance of spreading it is low because you've created low-risk environment. We're not going to give you a piece of strict advice on what to do relative to quarantining until we examine that particular case. We want to see the room, we want to trace some contacts, and then they'll give us advice. It's possible that a classroom might go into quarantine, and it might not affect the rest of the school. In preparation for that type of scenario, we have purchased new technology, and we plan on starting our school year in such a way that we can quickly adapt. If the health department advises us to isolate a group of kids, we can quickly adapt and go into a remote learning mode. Remote learning is different than virtual academy. Remote learning means you're connected to our classroom in some way. It might be the whole class goes remote. It might be an individual or two has to be remote while in quarantine. But that's different than our virtual academy. Now, a lot of people have asked me questions about virtual academy, and I'll transition to that in just a minute. First, I'm going to address a couple questions in the chat box. Our survey that we sent out on Saturday refers to the WLPS Virtual Academy. Is this a contracted academy, or is this a virtual academy option that is being offered through the school? In the past, both have been indicated as being offered. I would prefer to do the first semester virtually, but not through a contracted academy. So I can't, there's always going to be a part of our virtual academy that will be contracted. It changes a little bit at the level you're at. If you're at the elementary level, a lot of the content will be delivered through a contracted group. Right now, we're working with two of them, and we haven't made a decision on which one we're going to use. We're even exploring a partnership with other public schools that has been very slow to develop in this area. So I apologize, I don't have concrete answers, but if we had to decide today, we'd go with a contracted online delivery school at the elementary level. There'd be workbooks associated with it, and a mentor teacher from WLPS would be assigned. So your sons or daughters will be receiving essentially what I would call an asynchronous instructional platform. They could log on whenever they wanted to. They would get the delivery of content, and then a mentor teacher would work with assessment of content. And at the younger levels, it really starts to look a little different because devices, parent involvement, it has to be much more prevalent. So the contracted academy would still be involved, but they'd be utilizing workbooks and such. So that's where we stand today. But again, late last week, Washtenaw County started exploring more of a co-op, and we're still working through how that might work. At the upper grade levels, no one's really asking about that, but at the upper grade levels, we've been doing virtual learning for years. So it really looks different depending on the kid. So I have, for example, I have second grade content that I could push out when you get to and it looks kind of the same for each kid. I have 11th grade content that I can push out, but it's really, it has to be adjusted to your end of school needs and wants. Do you expect or have you had an increase in enrollment from districts that have announced online only options? Yes, we have. To be very frank, we're actually exploring, adding teachers at this point. So, people are all up in the air. They're all over the place. And we're trying to be considerate of that. All the other districts around us are as well. But yes, some of the districts that have said we're online to begin the year and they haven't really given a date or defined when they'd go back to in-person instruction, those parents have started to choose Whitmore Lake as an option. When you say health department has been contacted, do you contact the parent first? In other words, if health department agent is speaking to my child, I want to be present. Yes, it's our responsibility. Our health officers in each building would contact you immediately. And then the very next thing we would tell you is that we contacted the health department, and then we expect the health department to contact you as a parent. The parent, all the questions that we will ask relative to immediate contact tracing, all the questions asked of a student will come from a Whitmore Lake Public School employee. There won't be a health department employee who immediately contacts your sons or daughters. It's a good question, and it's been thoroughly vetted, and that's the way we think it would work best in our school district. Having a Whitmore Lake Public School trusted face go through a couple of questions and then share that information with the health department. So again, if you're just kind of logging in or catching in, I've got a couple more I'm trying to admit here. If you've just logged in, we've covered what do we do with positive cases in our school, and we've talked about online academies. All right, so if I'm not addressing a particular question that you have, please put it in the chat box. And if I see you're not muted, I will mute you, just so we're not picking up background noises. I'm going back to a question on online learning. I'm not sure I understand completely the question, but what, if any, support can the school give to working parents if there is an extended time off for in-person learning? Depends on what phase we're in. But if, for instance, we're in phase 4 still. Right now, we're currently in phase 4, and the health department says, you have to go into quarantine. We advise that you don't just do it by classroom, that you maybe go to an expanded, like say 4th and 5th grade, just as an example, or 5th and 6th grade has to quarantine. That's their advice. I would follow their advice. And then if we're still in phase 4, We can bring in small groups of kids and start working with them. So if we have to say to a group of kids, like, stay home, and then put that burden onto the parents for education, we don't want to do that for extended periods of time. So phase 4 does allow us a little bit of wiggle room. We'd have to work closely with the health department. But I mean, there's lots of different scenarios, but our goal would be as much face-to-face contact as would be allowed. And if they tell us it's just not safe to have an entire classroom together, then we would try to work with them to put things into chunks, 3 or 4 kids at a time. Maybe you meet outside, maybe you're in a tent. Anything's possible. Our goal, and what we think is right, is to bring kids into in-person instruction in low-risk environments. So our plan is in-person instruction in low-risk environment. And I say it over and over again because if we can't accomplish that, then we have to deviate. But there's all kinds of scenarios. So if I'm understanding correctly, that each classroom will be with only those classmates throughout the entire day. Such as recess. I mean, there's only 2 classrooms per grade, so they will not be able to play with their friends from the outside class outside. Yeah, it does make sense. Yes, as much as possible, those kids won't be interacting in phase 4. They'll be with their classroom as much as possible. Busing will be a little bit different. We're still, working out adding routes, trying to. I don't know that we can cohort. In fact, I'm pretty sure we can't cohort groups of classes onto one bus. Yeah, they'll go out to a recess with their class. They'll eat with that class. They'll stay with that class. That's how we ensure that they don't have to wear masks all day. There's a question, is there any potential way around a full semester commitment for working parents? This must be the online academy. For working parents, and even those of us lucky enough to be working from home, our situation could change in the middle of the semester. What choice will there be, for example, if I get called back to work in the middle of a semester? It depends on the grade level. There could be some flexibility. Our online program will probably delay a little bit and won't start till after Labor Day, and we'll give people a window to see how things progress. All right. If you get into a particular situation where you've made a choice and we have some capacity, we'll certainly work with you. Again, I said this before, I'll say it again. If I had to decide today, we would contract with a particular company we've been working with called Edgenuity. We've been working with them for over a decade. We have a lot of content alignment with them. So for instance, if your son's in an algebra class, the algebra class has been set up with Edgenuity to follow the standards that we're teaching. It gets a little newer and more nuanced as you get younger. So if you're in grade 2, we haven't used Edgenuity yet. So curriculum alignment would have to be evaluated. So to answer your question, it depends a little bit on your grade level. We are like a lot of school districts here. We've had to almost what I would call reverse engineer this online program. So based on what you say you want, we have to start building it backwards. And right now we've predicted the need would be small, and it is. I was on the phone with Midland Public Schools this morning, and 30% of their population is going to an online program. In Whitmore Lake, it's about 8%, and that's right now. So, and some of those, I'm including people who say they're leaning toward it. They're not for sure yet. So we're in a different situation, but when you're only dealing with 8% of your population, you can be more flexible. The higher that volume goes, the less flexibility I have, because I have to make, we have to staff it in some way. So.
Nope.
All right. I'm sorry. I'm answering text questions, and I'm trying to let some people in. If you're just joining us, could you make sure you're muted, please? Um, all right. I'm going to answer another question from the chat. And again, if there's something that I've answered, if you've asked me a direct question and the answer sounds too ambiguous for you to be completely comfortable with, please email me directly. I've had a lot of parents do that, and I answer them as quickly as I can, so there's not a lot of pleasant greetings all the time. I'm just giving you the answer you want, but I have no problem doing that. Have you followed the article from MLive that includes comments from WL teachers talking about concerns returning to school? Yeah, a little bit. I'm aware that positions have to be taken when you're dealing with union groups sometimes, and I understand that from our union. I would say our situation with our teachers, it's a little different than some of the districts around us. We for better or for worse, have been forced to work together very closely on all matters budgetary. And because of that relationship, we do communicate often, and I understand their position. And I would tell you that we do work with our staff. We have asked them a couple of times what their comfort level is, and if it's not adequate, we're trying to find other ways to use them. But the majority is they know that the right thing to do is to, if you can ensure a low risk environment, is to have in-person instruction. It's how things work best. It's what our community is demanding right now, and they're willing to work with us on that. So like anything else I read in the newspaper, I look at it, but I don't set my watch to it. If we choose virtual learning for the first semester, will there be an issue with our child going back to in-person school in the second half of the year? No, there shouldn't be. Again, the company, if we pick the company Edgenuity that we've been working with, we align our content standards with theirs. This is an answer to your question always comes with this caveat. Edgenuity will allow kids to progress and move forward, or if they're not accomplishing enough, it'll kind of keep them in a maybe a delayed mode. So they want to make sure that each kid masters a set of curriculum standards. So when they come back at a change of semester, so they'd come back in January, we might be off by a couple of weeks, but we'll be really close. For those kids attending, will devices be provided like last year? Indoor gatherings were reduced to 10 people or less. Why does that not affect school? Okay, so a couple different questions here. For those attending remotely, remember, remotely and virtual are two different things. But if you come to our school in person, the first week of school, we'll be disseminating devices. Hopefully, there's delays in everything right now, but our plan is to disseminate Chromebooks to all of our kids grades 3 and up. We have devices for younger kids too. Whether or not they'll be able to go home with kids, we're still debating, likely, but we have to have assurances because parents have to interact with them much more. So our 3rd grade and up, they get Chromebooks. We teach them how to use it. The classrooms have interactive boards that are going to connect with these devices. So we're really going to be teaching kids in the first week or two how to interact using the devices. And that's in preparation if we have to go into some kind of remote learning. If it's virtual learning, we still have a device available for you. It won't be required though. If you have your own device and that's what you prefer to use, it should work fine for virtual academies. Indoor gatherings we're reduced to 10. Yep, I bring this up a lot. There's a lot of different executive orders that conflict with the school executive orders. So for instance, one of them we're running up against right now is our open houses. We typically would invite parents in, meet teachers, but the executive order says you can't have gatherings of more than 10 people. But the executive order says that you can have school if you follow a set of requirements to create a low-risk environment. So why are the two things different? Can I not have a school function if I create an environment that's low risk for adults? I don't understand why. We work with our lawyers on that all the time, and right now they're saying keep the two things separate. When do we make a decision on whether or not we do in-person or virtual? The board will decide if our plan is appropriate Monday, August 10th. I expect them to vote on it. It has to be delivered to the state by August 15th. That's the short answer. Again, parenthetically, things change every week. So am I expecting the governor to come out after August 15th and say something different? Yes, because so many people are doing different things. But the roadmap to opening schools was intended to allow individual districts to look at their local communities and if they were able to create low-risk environments to bring kids in, if that's what the individual school boards wanted. Yes, yeah, all right. So, here's a question about electrostatic cleaners. Are they going to be used in school? Will it be using quaternary ammonia compounds? I believe we're using sodium hypochlorite compounds and not the quaternary ammonia compounds. But I am meeting with them next week to confirm all of that. So I can't answer your question directly. It's a good one to follow up with me on, and then I'll shoot you back an email. The electrostatic cleaners that are being referred to are at its very simplest, I can describe it, are kind of like fogging devices. You set a kind of a particle size that works with a particular classroom. And, you know, if you have a lot of computers, you want a particle size that doesn't impact the computers. If you have a lot of books and papers, you don't want to get those things wet. But it does allow you to quickly sanitize an area. And we thought those were appropriate for our buses. We thought those were appropriate for going through our classrooms and making sure that we can clean them quickly and sanitize them. For instance, you know, we can take care of a classroom and have it ready, sanitized completely and ready for use again after a period of time in just 10 or 15 minutes, as opposed to an individual custodian spraying and wiping everything down. These are good questions. Keep them coming. Can you disclose what percentage that you know of are planning to send persons in the fall? Right now, 92% have said for sure. For families that are opting for in-person plan, will there be some instructions for parents on how to use remote learning options programs to help? Yes. We will begin the year with teaching kids and parents how our devices are going to be used to promote learning. Even if we stay in in-person mode, which we think we'll likely be in for a while, these devices can help guide some of our instruction. So don't envision, if you could walk into a classroom on a typical Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning, don't envision kids just staring at computer screens and a teacher standing in front of them using the, we'll be using them through some projects. We'll be using them to support some of the learning plans that we already use. But we will be building capacity if we have to go into a remote situation. And then when a student gets home and they're sitting with mom and dad, they know how to use these devices. So the learning that a parent has to do doesn't, and it's significant. It was one of the biggest frustrations from our parents when we rolled out this remote learning in the spring. The learning the parent has to do doesn't slow down the learning that the kid has to do. So our goal is to try to do this in partnership with the parents and the kids as much as possible. And again, it changes a little bit at the grade level you're at. If you're kindergarten, the devices we use will be iPads, and as you get higher in grades, you get to third grade and above, we're using Chromebooks. So how you use those devices changes a little bit, the learning styles that you employ. They're all good questions. Thank you for being considerate and thoughtful. If I miss one, please let me know, but I'm kind of going through. If you take kids from other districts, will a child that does virtual learning the first semester have a spot? Guaranteed by law. Yes. Assuming we're operating during an in-person learning time, what is the current plan if a student or staff member becomes COVID positive? So I did cover this before, but it's always worth repeating. In terms of school closing for 14 days, requirements for the student or staff to return to school. So if you're symptomatic, there's two issues here. If you're symptomatic of COVID, we will tell you stay home until you're not symptomatic. Work with your primary care physician, and if a test is required, so be it. But if you do test positive, you find out you test positive, the district's protocol, they're similar to symptomology. You go home, and we work with the health department then on deciding who should be quarantined. Okay, so it might be that we say to the health department, look, this was a 9th grade student. They moved throughout the building in 6 different classes, but each of the classes that the student was in, there was 6 feet of distance between each student and the teacher throughout the entirety of the day. And during class passing time, when or in common areas, when that distance went from 6 feet to maybe something smaller like 3 feet, it wasn't present for 15 minutes. The health department would say, that's fine. No one was put into a higher risk category than low. You didn't move into medium or medium high or high risk at any point throughout the day. We're only quarantining that one student. Okay. If you take that same scenario and move it to, say, a kindergarten student, where they tend to get closer together, we would give information to the health department. Typically, it's going to look like this. 3 students work together in proximity of 6 feet. They did that a few times for more than 15 minutes. What do you advise? And then the health department would advise us. It's logical to expect that they would say those 3 kids have to be quarantined completely from the classroom for 14 days. If it's a staff member, there's a different protocol. If they're able to work with us, we continue to work with them remotely. If I'm answering that question too quickly, I've gone over it several times with the health department, and I'm trying to succinctly answer it. If it's not working for you, please reach out to me. Just to clarify, remotely is for those who medically cannot attend and will follow the classroom live. Yes. Virtual is through online or outside company. Edgenuity, it's how it's pronounced. That's if we were going with that today. Again, I am exploring a co-op with some Washtenaw schools. It's a slow process. It's a contractual process. We feel like our parents want information right now, and we have to make a decision sooner rather than later. So I have a contract with Edgenuity, which we currently use at the middle and high school level. We've been using them for years to extend it down into K-6. And Jen, if you want information on that, please email me directly. Again, I haven't put it out for whole-scale consumption yet because we haven't signed the contract with them yet. We're still exploring if another option would be better for our parents. What we like about Edgenuity is the alignment to our curriculum, the different interaction with grade levels, depending on how much ability they have with technology, and our ability to assign mentor teachers. So you would even though you'd be accessing online content, you would be always have the ability to work with a WLPS teacher if there was a problem. Good question though, good summary. My child will be entering 3rd grade. How do you envision specials going for in-person school? Art will be coming into the classroom. Music will likely be coming into the classroom. Gym will be leaving the classroom. Gym will be outside as much as possible. Music might be limited in singing, and masks, if we are going to sing, might be required. If we're using devices, my favorite musical performance at the elementary is always the drumsticks on the bucket. I don't know what we call that exactly, but I love it when Miss J does that. Those things would be have to be cleaned after and brought into another classroom, but that's something that it's easy to do. All good questions. I'm going to try it because I think I've answered all the ones in the chat. If I didn't, please repeat it. I'm going to open up another computer and I'm going to go through some of our survey questions just to make sure I've covered all of those. Again, our survey went out on Saturday morning. Please, if you haven't taken it, we'll send that link out again today. But right now, about less than 8% of our parents say they want an online academy. If you factor in those that are leaning towards it, that might go, if they get more information, it goes to about 8.5%. So we don't have a huge capacity, but that's where we are right now. We expect those numbers to change. We have seen an influx in interest in our district because of our in-person option, and we have been getting lots of support with our in-person option. But people do want to know the answer to the question, what happens if there's positive cases, and how do you maintain low-risk environment? And we maintain low-risk environment by ensuring that kids work together in their cohorts as much as possible, and when 6 feet of distance is not possible, that masks are being worn. And as soon as I said that, I had 2 more questions in the chat. So if we sign up for virtual, no medical reason, we have to make a full year commitment. No, it's the WLPS virtual option is a semester-based commitment. Someone did ask previously if there's a special situation. I'd have to look at it. We are negotiating with the company right now to allow for a 2-week window. So if it was started, say, on September 8th, you'd have 2 weeks to figure out if it's what you wanted, if it's not working for you. If you really just want to see how things play out and you sign up for it, you can get out of it within a couple weeks. So it's plausible to say that if you're you made a decision for virtual and it's all of a sudden September 20th and you don't want that decision to hold anymore, you could get out of it risk-free and join us in person. Is there an opportunity for people to volunteer to assist with hand washing, sanitation efforts, temperature being taken at school? Yeah, there might be. Any guests we're trying to mitigate? I mean, of course, your schools are completely COVID free right now. So anything we bring, any person we bring into it, there's there's a risk associated with that. And so, you know, if we can minimize who's coming into our building, that's the smart thing to do. If we know that our employee situation, our student situation, our chances of keeping the risk low are better. That being said, you know, schools are a human-based. I mean, there's no way around it. The more people you put in front of those kids, the better chances you're going to keep them safe, the better chances you're going to get to learning deficiencies and overcome that. So certainly if we can do it, we will ask for the assistance of volunteers. We're just being really cautious about it as we roll into the school year. So I would expect nothing at first, but then as we get a handle on things, we find some weak spots, we would probably ask for some volunteering, just with careful screening. An example might be, and just to follow up on Jenny Only's question, like we are shutting down our water fountains, but we do have bottle filling stations. So we want kids to bring their own water bottles, but we don't want them drinking. So just simply having a parent kind of watching our drinking fountains, making sure that they're not using them. We'll have signs, we'll have them closed off. But if something happens to them, we just don't want a bunch of kids using it. So those are things we'll be educating groups of kids on. But you know, maybe we could use some help with stuff like that. We'll have hand sanitation areas all throughout the building, and just making sure that when kids come in or move to an environment, they're constantly using that stuff. It could be helpful. We'll start the year without it, but we'll adjust as needed. Are you still waiting for a lot of surveys to be returned? We got a pretty good sample size. Normally when we do a survey like this, we don't get, again, if I asked you how you felt about a tax increase, I'd probably get a lot. If I asked you how you felt about a modification to our reading program, I probably wouldn't get a lot. And that's typical. In this context, asking you how you feel about schooling, given all the concerns, yeah, we've got a really good sample size. I do expect it to grow, but it's giving us good feedback right now. If you know someone who hasn't taken it, it's pretty simple to fill out, and please encourage them to do so. I think I put a cutoff date on August 18th. That's really as late as I feel like I can possibly wait. In all practicality, you know, I'd like to have a decision before that, but that's about a few days after when I expect Governor Whitmer might be making some modifications to the current executive order relative to schooling. I'm expecting something on or about August 15th. So I intentionally kind of picked a date that might give us some flexibility. How many families have completed surveys so far? I don't know the exact number. I know how many numbers there are, but we've asked, I would say maybe close to 40%. But I have to double check all those, because some of them kids come from one family, and we've asked each survey for each kid. I know you said no volunteers allowed in phase 4, but will you be able to help once we're in phase 5? We're going to start the year in phase 4 saying no to volunteers. We're going to get a handle on what it is we need, and we may be able to modify that even before we move to phase 5. I would say very limited though. In phase 5, many of the requirements move to, and strongly recommended options move to just recommended. We plan on following as really not deviating too much from our course in phase 5. But yes, it would loosen some of the restrictions. If you move to phase 5, it's an indication that the region you're in, and the region we're in includes Macomb, Oakland, Wayne counties, Washtenaw County, of course, and Livingston. We're considered in the entire region medium high risk. Um, um, right now, the entire state has no high risk areas. Um, and there are some medium risk areas. So I know there's a lot of stories about populations of COVIDs going up. If you look at the entire state, that is true because it kind of has migrated away from the Detroit area and it's moving out towards the state. If you look at the Whitmore Lake region, and the Livingston County area, we're still in a relatively low positive case environment. If we follow through on all of our requirements, we move to what the health department considers low risk. And it's at that point that we're moving into in-person instruction. If we stay that way, I'm more comfortable bringing volunteers in. And thank you for volunteering for 5 years. That's incredible. How is lunch going to work for kitchen staff and kids eating in class? If they buy lunch, is it grab and go, not hot lunch? Yeah, it's going to be mostly grab and go. Honestly, lunch is a challenge. I'm exploring even starting the school year off with just half days because I'm not sure exactly how lunch is going to play out. But right now our plan includes bringing it to the classrooms in lower grades, letting kids at the upper grades, high school and such, go into a cafeteria, get food, and then move into an environment with a low volume of kids and eat their lunch in a spaced environment. You know, it's such an important part of a school day, and it has to be done the right way. So if I don't feel completely comfortable with how it's being staffed, I will recommend that the school board put us into a half-day environment to give me a chance at the beginning of the year to work through that. And that in that situation, Stephanie, we'd be probably given a grab-and-go breakfast option, and then not a lunch option. We just allow the kids to go home for lunch and do some version of, that's how we'd start the year. But again, it's an important part of our day. It's an important part of our community. We expect to be serving lunches soon after the start of the year in the classrooms or in small group environments and cafeterias. Will we be informed if the class sizes get larger with distancing already being an issue? This may cause parents to change their mind if an increase. Yes, we don't normally go out and say this is our class sizes, but it's typically the lower you get, the closer you get to kindergarten, the closer people watch class sizes. Outside of this particular context of crisis that we're in, it's always a challenge for me because I know that learning isn't strictly correlated to the number of kids working with a particular teacher. It's much more strategy based. If a teacher is using effective strategies, learning is not compromised by class size. But in this particular context, spacing kids out is really important. So yes, you will know not maybe the class size, but we will be advising like, hey, we might be adding a grade. And the reason we're adding a grade, a teacher to a grade level, is because we want to keep class sizes small. So I don't know if that answers your question. I don't plan on giving you a chart of how grade class sizes move in the next few weeks, but we will be monitoring it. And if we don't feel comfortable with the spacing that we've already established, we'll be notifying you that we've added staffing and added grades. You said you believe the governor will soon be speaking in executive orders regarding school. Do you believe new announcements will be more or less restrictive? Hey, you caught that. Hey, my inside information, which isn't great, but only is telling me that the governor's office, relative to schools, she knows the pressure that each individual school is under. She knows that she's putting superintendents into this role of playing epidemiologist, and we've pushed back very strongly. We've been given some tools to evaluate cases in our area that are pretty cool. I look at them all the time, but I can't comment on the phase 4 to phase 5 right now. I would say a lot of people want her to move to phase 3 because it feels, they feel like cases are going up. But again, if you look at the entire state as a whole, and if you exclude populations like prisons, for instance, you do see spikes, but they're not as big. And you see testing going way up and case positivity staying relatively okay in percentages that we're comfortable with. And if that case positivity percentage can stay in the 3% area and not get closer to 4, then I do think she'll go to phase 5. But there's so many variables that go with that, so many. So I can't speak to it, just that we've asked her to look at it and give us a decision that's closer to August 15th so we can make plans accordingly.
Okay.
Let's see. Will Virtual Learning Academy give you one-on-one time with students for reading assessment? For example, by a teacher or a mentor. My children are in 2nd and 3rd grade. I'm not sure if I can answer that question completely. I don't think it would happen every day. So I think the answer to the question is best answered like this. It does depend on their reading ability. 2nd and 3rd grade reading abilities are closely monitored by WLPS. And if there's any concerns that it might be off grade level, our mentors would be challenged with increasing the one-on-one reading time and working with them. If it's closer to grade level, I don't know that we would do that on a more than a week by week basis. If a teacher gets sick, how are you going to work with subs? Typically subs go from school to school. We're going to use in-class, in-building subs as much as possible and limit the amount of subs that we bring in from the outside. We'll have, if we're bringing a sub in from the outside, it'll be a dedicated sub, and just the random sub that shows up, we don't want to do that. If we run into a problem getting subs, we go into a remote learning mode, and that's how we handle it. Again, the idea is to limit who you're in contact with to keep the risks low in our school environments. If we can't keep the risks low, then we switch to a remote. Will the school be providing added mental health supports to kids and staff who are there for in-person learning? We did add significantly to our mental and social emotional needs last year. So I don't think we're going to exceed what we added last year, but we did start programs with the ISD, the county ISD, and the county in general. We added psychologists to our buildings, and we work in partnership with them. So we have beefed up our staff. We have something called a supplemental service agreement with WISD that adds people to our buildings at the elementary level. Yes, expect the same level of support and surveying our students in it. Maybe the best way to say it, we're not adding, but we will be surveying more often for those social emotional needs and supports. So again, if I'm missing what you're asking, please feel free to reach out to me. If all we need to go virtual learning due to governor mandates, I think the question is, if the governor mandates that we're in virtual learning, will we do this for the semester? Let me read it directly and see if I can better understand it. If we all need to go to virtual learning due to governor mandates, will it be just one program? No. It will be, if we get ordered, say for instance, we get moved to phase 3, and then the entire district of Whitmore Lake would move into what I call remote learning mode. And that is not virtual. Virtual is with another company, and you're doing it kind of on your own with some support from Whitmore Lake staff. Remote learning is when we have to stop bringing kids into a classroom and we kind of take the classroom to your home. It's done somewhat in sync, so we might have whole group instruction, and what's a little, kind of like we did in the spring, but with more synchronous, in a more synchronous environment. So a teacher might take 15 kids at a time and say, you're in third grade now, we're going to follow from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, we're going to do this lesson, and then you have 2 hours to do it on your own. It's going to be much more robust. The time constraints are going to be much more demanding on your children and you. And the difference is that we're giving everyone devices, so we won't have to worry about spacing, knowing that if you have one home and 3 kids and you're sharing one device, we were really trying to accommodate your needs in that particular situation and spacing out so the instruction. Because everyone's getting a device, we don't have to do that as much. We can say 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock is third grade. The same thing could happen in fourth grade, if that makes sense. Who is determining what the risk levels are at the school? Will there be regular checks of this level? So the health department gives the school districts a checklist essentially, and then we share, we go through and we look, are we, how many kids do we have in a classroom? Have we spaced it out adequately? Are our kids wearing masks at that grade level? How are they interacting in common areas? And if it's spaced out correctly and as planned, then we share that with we think we're in low risk environment. We share that with the health department. They can agree or disagree, but they're really trying to leave it up to us as best as we can. And again, in the context of this situation, we're being very careful with it. It's not something you want to try to cheat. The best answer to your question is we're following the guidelines of our health officials, and then if we check off all the boxes, we're in low risk environment. So it's safe to assume that we will have a solid answer regarding in-person half days only to start, for example. You might have it before that, but they want it as soon as possible. I'm still evaluating it. Our goal is to approve a calendar at the board meeting with 180 days of instruction that starts August 31st. But if I feel the way I do right now, relative to starting the year, I will be recommending at the board meeting that we adopt the calendar, but with half days. So August 11th. When I say solid, I'm excluding state level mandates. Yeah, okay. If I didn't answer that, Julie, please let me know. Let's see. So what happens to students considering virtual if we go into remote mode? Depends on when we go into remote. If you're already, if it's midway through October, just stay in your virtual program. But if it happens early, I give you a different answer. For families that opt for virtual, will they be able to join the school for remote if that switch is made after the school year has started? Michelle, you have about a 2-week window, and we're trying to make it as close to a 3-week window as we can by starting the virtual program a little bit later. So we think that you get into late September, you really have to be, as a parent, you have to know, is this working for me or not? And if you decide it's working for you, you're really locked into that decision. But we do want to be considerate of that. We know it's a big choice to exclude your sons and daughters from a classroom that they've been a part of. So, we do want to give, and we're working with our contractors to say, give us that flexibility. Our parents we know they're going to demand it. And so far they've given us 2 weeks, and I'm trying to maximize that as best as I can. What if my child has no medical reason for, I assume that means for going remote. then the expectation is they're in person, or that you pick virtual if you're not comfortable with that. Can the health department change the level once the number of students in the classrooms grows with schools of choice? It's not that, I hope I'm communicating this the right way. The health department works with us, but they probably won't make the decision for us. They will advise. They will tell me, I think candidly, you're exceeding a low risk environment. You're moving into medium because you've got too many kids in a classroom. That's probably how that would go. But they're saying they don't have the authority to shut us down relative to this particular virus. Why can't she? Tammy, you might want to contact me directly. I think I know what you're saying. A lot of people want to know, like, why can't I just go remote and then be with my class? It might have a simple answer. I'll try. It's too much to expect the teacher to manage a classroom and a bunch of remote classrooms at the same time. If you say, okay, I'll do the in-person and then I'll do the remote later, then you're asking a teacher to teach twice as much as you normally would. And we don't feel comfortable with that right now. So we're not demanding that of our teachers. What we're saying is we believe we have the capacity to handle it on a small scale basis. And if 3 kids get quarantined from a room and have to be remote because a doctor said they have to be away for 14 days, but they're able to participate, they're basically asymptomatic positive, we want them to be able to keep up with us in the classroom. And then after that quarantine is over, to come back and be in sync with the rest of the class. Again, if the entire, and that's why we did the survey, if like the entire community is saying we want remote, we're running about 8% saying we'd like virtual. If everyone's jumping in and saying, no, we don't want to send our kids to school, I mean, we can go remote right now and then take the virtual learning thing off the table. But the majority of our parents, over 90% of them, say they want in-person instruction. Yeah, I know, Tammy, again, might want to, let me try to clarify. Let's see, just to clarify that a virtual is a 1 semester lock for an, yes, it's a 1 semester decision. And to piggyback on a question that someone else asked, it's a 1 semester decision for our virtual academy. We are trying to give you as much of a window to evaluate it to see if you want to start that way and come back in. Right now, we're giving you a 2-week window, and I don't know that I can extend it beyond that. What we planned on doing is starting our virtual academy, giving you 2 weeks to evaluate. Now you're like, you're close to September 20th. You really have to decide if it's working for you, stay with it. If it's not, we'll welcome you back into the classroom. And again, I apologize for not having all this in writing. The reason I'm not pushing it out is because we are working on a potential another partnership with Ann Arbor Public Schools and a couple other districts to see if maybe a co-op might work better. But it's, Ann Arbor is so much bigger that bringing all those pieces together, it's challenging. We are smaller. We tend to move a little quicker. I just can't give you, I don't want to set this in stone yet until I've evaluated all the options thoroughly. And again, if I'm not answering it the right way, please feel free to email me. Here's a clarification, please, no problem asking those. If we start virtual and the school has been shut down and everyone goes remote, we are stuck for the first semester in virtual. Can we go into a remote in the second semester with everyone else? Yes, and the reason why I don't just say hey, if we all go remote and you're virtual, come back and join us, is because I'm not anticipating long stretches of remote learning. We're following a reopening plan that gives us the flexibility to go remote, either by the classroom level, grade level, maybe building level. It's plausible that one building might be remote, one building might not be. If the whole district goes remote for a period of time, maybe we come back together in 3 weeks. And so, you know, that's why you really have to decide. If you're virtual for a semester. If you're in person, you're in person for the semester, and we'll be teaching you how to manage remote instruction should we go into it. How do we get more than 40% of families? We just keep pumping it. We just keep pushing it out there and just saying, please answer this. It's growing all the time, and that 40% number is just my first glance at it. I was looking at the questions more than I was the grade levels and who was answering the questions, but we will be promoting the survey. We want as many people to take it as possible, and we know that one email doesn't do it for us. Points to consider. If the decision is made to do half days, that might change people's initial response to send their kids in person. Families may have answered that question based on work days and child. Yep. Yes, we agree. That's why getting that information out as quickly as possible is a priority. Have you considered a semester of in-person for one class in a grade and one remote? Yes, we've considered multiple options, too many to list. What you're talking about with that particular question, Jessica, is what we might call a hybrid approach. And it has some positive and some negatives. And ultimately we decided that there were more positives to eliminating hybrid to start the school year. And, but it's not off the table should we get more information as we get closer to September and even as we progress into the school year. You have to be flexible with this. It's not comfortable with people. Parents have to decide work schedules. They have to decide daycare schedules. Schools have to staff. They have to budget. And this has been an incredibly frustrating 5 months of building something, tearing it down, rebuilding it, tearing it down. It happens every week. I had a full head of hair in March. Clarification, half days, that I would be proposing half days just for the first week. And yes, we'll make that decision. If the board gives me flexibility, I could be making it earlier. If they want it in conjunction with the approval of the calendar for the school year, it'll be done Monday night and it'll be disseminated on Tuesday morning. Typically, our board has been pretty flexible with me, though, in this particular context. They are careful with the calendar because they know it has implications for school funding. But in the context of what they've been dealing with, they've really been giving me a lot of flexibility to make some of those decisions as long as it's communicated well. Kids Club don't have answers yet for everything. We're bringing it up to staff this week, and we'll start communicating separately about it next week. Julie, it sounds like I didn't answer your question. Sorry. Email me directly, please, and I'll work with you. So 2 topics we covered. Symptomatic kids. I think we didn't get a lot of questions about that. Most of the questions that I got from you today revolve around virtual instruction. So we've got a small percentage of people saying that's definitely what I want, but we've got a lot of questions about it. So we're going to be working very closely and quickly to try to get more and more information out to you, because that seems like it's the crux of most of the stuff I'm answering. And again, if you need a particular a personalized response to something that I just didn't answer correctly or well enough and you want clarification, ask it directly, and we'll we'll put it into our FAQ, and we'll let everyone take a look at it. Yeah, thank you. Let's see. Can you tell us about the responses? I think Nancy's saying, can you let us know of the responses that you received back? Are a lot of them high school students saying they would like to be in person, or is it spread equally, middle, elementary, middle? It's fairly well spread out. I would say the closer you get to kindergarten, probably the more actively people are responding. The closer you get to your seniors, the less actively, and that's common. That hasn't changed during COVID-19. Again, I think part of the reason is that our high school students have been interacting with virtual classrooms for years. So if we have a schedule block and you can't take Spanish, you want to take an AP Spanish class or something, you can't get that because it's conflicting with a band class or something that you really want to take, that we've been using that environment to move our courses along for years. There's a question about the school board meeting on Monday. It's a Zoom meeting. It's open to the public. Those links are always on our website. Maria answered that. Thank you. Got that before me. Radar Carter. All right. So I'm looking at the responses. Again, they're not really deviating from the questions that you asked in this chat room. I'm not seeing any more questions. I'm willing to kind of wrap up this meeting. What the board will evaluate on Monday is simply a plan that has to go to the state. The content of the plan, the majority of it, is all embedded in that FAQ that we sent out earlier. We'll keep updating that. Plans, if you're looking to a board meeting to really get into the nitty-gritty of something, of a particular plan, it really doesn't deviate from our FAQ at all. It's just a requirement that the state has given us. So I wouldn't look to the actual paper document to find any more answers. I would look to that FAQ for your answers, and I would continue to reach out to me or staff members if you have particular questions. All right. I have one new message. Thank you. Oh, there's a good one to end on. Thank you so much for all you're doing. We appreciate you and all the staff. Yeah, staff have been awesome. And if you know any custodians or maintenance people, man, if you see them, they've rocked it this summer. So give them a big thumbs up. All right. Again, I'll look for more written communication, email communication on some of this stuff. And if we need to do another Zoom next week, we will. So thanks for joining us today. I'm going to close out.